Welcome to tonight's class. It's very exciting getting back into our weekly classes. This week's Parsha of Chayei Sarah, talking about the life of Sarah, which is actually interesting that the Parsha begins with saying about this is the life of Sarah, and actually talks about her passing. She passed away at 127 years old, and the purchasing of the Ma'arat HaMachpelah, that was the first piece of land, the first real estate in the land of Israel that was not just gifted to us by God, by Hashem, but also purchased by Avram Avinu, purchased by Abraham for top dollar amount in order to bury Sarah, in that place. The Torah then goes on to describe in this week's Parsha the occurrences that took place thereafter, after she passed away. At that point, they mourned her, and then Avram decides it's time to marry off their son Yitzchak, time to marry off Isaac, and he sends his servant Eliezer, sends his servant to Haran, to relatives of his, and to find a wife for Yitzchak. Ultimately, he comes back and finds a girl named Rebecca, which later on becomes his wife. At the time when when Eliezer the servant went to Haran, Rivka was only a young girl of 3 years old at the time, and she comes back. She comes back to Avram's place of living, and as they're coming back, Yitzchak is out praying mincha, afternoon prayer in the field, and then sees her coming, and they bring her into his mother's, bring her into the house, and eventually thereafter, a period of time later, they marry. We're going to focus tonight on an interesting part to this story, and that is the power of lighting candles, lighting Shabbat candles, even a girl of a young age, which, as we see in this Parsha, Rivka at that point was a young girl, just 3 years old, and she was lighting Shabbat candles at that point in time. So our class tonight is entitled "The Power of the 3-Year-Old Facing a Moral Decline of Society." Stand Jewish women and girls on a mission to brighten the darkness, and we'll explore the Rebbe's Shabbat candle lighting campaign, which is based off of this week's Torah portion. So let's jump right into it. If anyone has any questions or comments along the way, feel free to ask. So the Rebbe spoke this talk was to a group of women in 1974, and at that point in time, even amongst those that kept Torah mitzvahs to the utmost, in many households, the custom was that only married women would light Shabbos candles, would light Shabbat candles. But girls, before they got married, would just fulfill the obligation through their mother lighting the Shabbat candles. Time passes, and the world changes. So the Rebbe suggests, I wish to raise a proposal in connection with these changes. The proposal is directly relevant to unmarried Jewish girls. By way of introduction, Jewish people have always endeavored to fill their lives with as much light as possible, because divine service must be carried out with joy. The Torah is also called the Torah of light, Torah Or, a Torah that illuminates our lives. And therefore, in order to have joy, generally joy is associated with light, and being depressed, being down, under is associated with darkness, being not in a good place. The more light we have, the brighter it is around us, both physically and spiritually, the easier it is for us to live a joyful life. The Rebbe Rayatz, the previous Rebbe, related among the wonder and miracle stories about the Baal Shem Tov, which was the founder of the Hasidic movement, that the Baal Shem Tov liked when the house was full of light in the literal sense. One of the stories about the Baal Shem Tov is that there's many miracle stories told about the Baal Shem Tov, but one of them is connected specifically with light. It was once dark in his dark in the house, and he lived a life didn't have a lot of financial means himself, was living a life of poverty, and there wasn't even enough funds in the house to buy candles, or for whatever reason there were no candles in the house when it was the middle of the winter. There were icicles hanging from the roof outside, and he tells his daughter, "Go get some icicles take them off the overhang from the roof." They bring into the house these icicles. He tells him, try lighting it. Light it with a match, the same one that makes said, a candle can burn, can decide that ice can burn. And they lit this icicle, and miraculously it lit and burnt and lit up the home. Of course, miracles aren't just for an irrelevant cause, not just to make a trick that all of a sudden it should be light, but it was something that was very relevant to the Baal Shem Tov, not just at that period of time, but generally the concept of being full of light, both physically and spiritually, added in the special joy of mitzvah, special joy in serving Hashem. A house full of a physical light reminds us that our role is to illuminate our homes and to extend this even to the streets outside. So in addition to the light being enjoyable on our own, the fact that we see light reminds us that our role as well is to be just like the candle. You can put a candle in a dark place and a little bit of light can illuminate that. And when we see candles and see light, the more that we see it, the more it reminds us that we should fill that role of being a luminary to those around us. Women have a mission and a mitzvah in this regard, specifically. Shabbos is a day of rest and calmness on which we are free from work and worries and able to devote more attention to family, sharing words of Torah and the like. As the day of Shabbos approaches, we welcome it into our homes by lighting candles to illuminate the home. So Shabbos in general, Shabbat in general, is a time of calmness, relaxing, pulling away from the hustle and bustle of the work week, and relaxing, taking time to connect to Hashem, taking time to be more spiritual, taking time to elevate ourselves and to focus on the light and joy of our families and our surroundings. What is the reason for lighting Shabbat candles? What is the reason for Shabbos candles? So lighting candles is to back up a moment, lighting Shabbat candles is a rabbinic mitzvah. So there are 613 biblical commandments, 613 mitzvahs in the Torah, and then there are 7 additional ones that were added by the sages throughout history, like lighting the Hanukkah menorah is a rabbinic mitzvah, reading the Megillah on Purim is a rabbinic mitzvah, washing our hands on the Tilat Yadayim before we eat bread is a rabbinic mitzvah. So there's a number of them. One of these rabbinic mitzvahs, one of these 7 mitzvahs, is the mitzvah of lighting Shabbat candles before Shabbos as well as before each of the holidays. What is the reason why this mitzvah was instituted? Our sages ordained, so this is from the Code of Jewish Law, Shulchan Aruch, our sages ordained that on Shabbat, every person should have a light burning in each room that he will enter on Shabbat, for the sake of peace in the home, so that he or the other members of his household will not stumble over a piece of wood or a stone. So the first basic reason for lighting Shabbat candles is, think of the time when we didn't have before electricity, there's no other source of light, completely dark outside, and a person would come into their home on the evening of Shabbos and it was completely dark. It's not very peaceful if everyone's bumping into things and tripping over things. It doesn't help bring a very peaceful environment. And therefore, any room in the house which is being used on Shabbos should have some sort of light so that we won't trip over things. Additionally, every person is also obligated to partake of his Shabbat meal at night near the light of a lamp. For this is included in the obligation of the lighting in Shabbat. Indeed, the primary aspect of the mitzvah of kindling lights is lighting a lamp close to where one eats. One should be meticulous in doing so and making this beautiful light making this light beautiful. Anyone who is meticulous in doing so will merit sons who are Torah scholars. So the idea of lighting Shabbat candles, in addition to having light so we don't bump into things, we have an additional obligation, which is we're all familiar with having a Shabbat meal. And in order to enjoy a Shabbat meal, and besides for actually being able to see the food that we eat, it's not very enjoyable if we're sitting in a pitch black room without being able to see anything. And therefore, the primary place where one should light Shabbat candles is in the area where they will be eating. And therefore, in the place of lighting Shabbat candles, generally in the dining room or nearby, where while we're eating, we can see and enjoy the light of the candles. That's why the candles aren't lit in the living room or other places in the home. The best place to light it is near where we are eating. And if someone is eating their Shabbat meal at someone else's house and then going back home after, then the appropriate place for them to light it generally is in the place where they're going to be eating their Shabbat meal, because that's the primary one of the primary reasons of lighting the candles is that we should be able to enjoy the Shabbos meal with light around us. So we have Shabbos candles, Shabbat candles, so we don't bump into things, and so that we can enjoy the meal Friday night with and fulfill the mitzvah of oneg Shabbat, of enjoying Shabbos. And of course, it's much more enjoyable when it's bright and lit up around us. As the verse implied by the verse tells us, Kiner mitzvah, but Torah are, a mitzvah is a lamp, and Torah is a light. The implication is that the light of the Torah results from the lamp of a mitzvah. So if the mitzvah is the lamp, then the light which is coming out of the lamp is the Torah. So when we fulfill the mitzvah of lighting Shabbat candles, that affects the surrounding and our environment around us, and that way our household is brought up in a bright place of fulfilling mitzvahs, and then they're encouraged to study Torah, and the family, the children, will be encouraged and enticed to study Torah and grow up to be scholars of Torah. There are those who place 2 wicks in this lamp. So now, how many candles should a person light for Shabbat candles? There are those who place 2 wicks in this lamp, intending for one light to recall the command, remember, and the other, observe. When using candles made of beeswax, tallow, or similar materials, they light 2 candles. One may add additional candles, kindling 3 or 4, as it is permitted to increase beyond the specified number of lights with a specific intention, provided that one does not light fewer than 2. So most people light at least 2 candles. The reason, or in this case, we're using a lamp, oil lamp or a kerosene lamp, some kind of lamp. There was 2 wicks in it. The wicks would be at opposite ends. It was kind of like a bowl. You have a wick on opposite ends so that they're not touching each other. So say for Havdalah, we specifically want candles that are touching each other. That's not a candle. We don't call that a candle. In halachic terminology, that's called a torch. As soon as you have 2 wicks together, then it's not anymore called just a candle for itself. Then it's already called a torch, and that's something that we use for the end of Shabbat, the end of Shabbos when we do Havdalah, and we use a candle. The candle that we use is something that should have at least 2 wicks. If someone doesn't actually have a Havdalah candle, that blessing can be made over just taking 2 regular candles and just holding them together so that the 2 wicks are touching, so that it has that ability, and that's the blessing we say on the Havdalah candle, Borei Ma'orei Ha'esh, the lights of the candle, implying more than one. But for Shabbos, we want them to be separate. The candles should be separate, as well as when we're coming up in a few weeks to Hanukkah, when we light our Hanukkah candles or Hanukkah menorah, we want to make sure that the candles or wicks are far enough apart from each other that they're not going to join up together and just become one flame. They should be individual flames. And here the reason for the wicks being 2 separate wicks in this lamp, or if you're using candles, at least 2 candles, is because the Torah records the Aseret HaDibra, the 10 Commandments, are recorded twice. Once in the place where it took place, just after the Exodus of Egypt, and then it's spoken again repetition of it again later on in the book of Deuteronomy, in Devarim, in Parshat Va'eschanan. It repeats again the Ten Commandments. However, if we look at the wording of the Ten Commandments of the Aseret HaDibrot, in each of the places, there's slight variances, there's slight differences in some of the terms that are used. And one of the differences that it mentions between the two times that the Aseret HaDibrot are recorded, the Ten Commandments are mentioned, is regarding the mitzvah of Shabbat, of keeping Shabbos. One time it says, Zachor et Yom HaShabbat lekadsho, you should remember the day of Shabbat and keep it holy. And in the other place it says, Shamor et Yom HaShabbat lekadsho, that you should observe the day of Shabbos and keep it holy. So because it says in one place to remember, which is a positive remembering, observing is a reference to refraining, holding back from things that we shouldn't be doing. But because of that, many people have the custom of lighting two candles, one for the word Zachar, to remember, and one for the word Shamar, to observe. Of course, after that, besides for those two candles that are lit, those two flames that are lit, many have a custom of adding additional candles. One for some families light an additional candle for each member of the household, for each child. That was my parents' custom growing up, to light one candle for each of the children. So my mother lights 13 candles every week, and thank God, Baruch Hashem, in our house, Shterna does that as well. That was her mother's custom as well. So she lights 11 candles every week. Of course, lighting, as we just learned, adding is not a problem as long as it's for a specific reason and specific intention, as long as we have a minimum of 2 candles, and that adds in the enjoyment of Shabbos, to be able to see what we're doing, see what we're eating, and be able to enjoy the environment. Now, who are the ones that are obligated in this mitzvah of lighting Shabbat candles? Both men and women are obligated to have a light burning in their homes on Shabbat. However, women are charged with greater care concerning this mitzvah, as they are more frequently found at home and involved in household needs. So the mitzvah of having Shabbat candles in a place where we eat is on everyone, both men and women. However, the primary ones that light the Shabbos candles, the Shabbat candles, are the women, because it's something which is involved with the household. And as the Torah teaches us, the different roles that there are, the gender roles between men and women, men are more, their job is more on the outside of the home, transforming the world outside and bringing that home. As we'll learn later on this evening, a quote from the Talmud that says that men's job is to go out and harvest the crop, work the fields, and bring it into the home. And then the woman's job, the wife's job, is to take that raw material, raw grain, and then transform it into delicious foods, bake it into bread, break it into other foods, doing that final preparation, taking the raw material and transforming it into something that's usable, edible for people to eat and enjoy. So based on this idea, the women are called the Akeret Habayis. The women are called the foundation of the home. The ones that are the love and care and environment in the home is the primary job of the women, and therefore Shabbat candles are lit by women. The same thing, for a moment, diverting from this mitzvah, talking about Kiddush or other mitzvahs, that generally, if it's a family together, then the husband, the father, is the one that would do the Kiddush. However, if the father is not there, or there is someone's living alone, women themselves are also obligated in the mitzvah of making Kiddush. And many of the other mitzvahs that we have, that if both men and women are doing it together, one does it and fulfills the obligation for the family. If they're away, the other one does it. So similarly, in this case of Shabbat candles, the obligation is both on men and women. However, it's the primary obligation is on the women, and therefore she's the one that does it. If for some reason she's not in the home, she's not there, then the husband would take over, or if someone's living on their own, they certainly should light Shabbat candles themselves in the area where they'll be eating the Shabbat meal. Any comments or questions before we go on? Okay, if we're all good, then we'll continue. Adding in light. However, when the light outside on the street is continually diminishing, we cannot suffice with the measure of light we had in the past. We must add more light. This is true about our current time. The world outside is filled with wild events and conduct, the types of which the world has never seen before. These occurrences are rooted in darkness. The lack of light that some circles are suffering from, this makes it all the more necessary to add light. True light that can illuminate the darkness across the world. So the idea of adding in light is something that we should be doing when it seems that the world around us seems to be getting darker and more desolate, seems to be not behaving according to the way that Hashem designed the world. People are moving further away from the way that it was intended to be. This is an opportune time to add in more light. And like we mentioned before, we're talking about light, the light of Torah, the light of mitzvahs, specifically a mitzvah connected to light. We must light a lamp or at least a small candle in every place where we can reach. As with everything, the starting point is within our own homes. As bright as our house has been until now, we must illuminate it further with physical light that is associated with Torah, mitzvot, and Judaism. So when we want to brighten up the world around us, we look around the world and we say that we're concerned about the direction that the world is going in. We have to look at ourselves and say, where can I add in more light? Specifically, look at the Torah. Where does the Torah tell us that we should be adding when we light candles? We look at what is the Torah mitzvah light, and then we can assume, we can understand and learn where we should be focusing our energy. The mitzvah that expresses light in the literal sense is the lighting of candles on the eve of Shabbat and festivals. This is how we welcome the Shabbat or festival into our home and for our entire family. So how do we express which mitzvah and where in the Torah is the concept of light expressed the most in the physical, literal sense? Is in lighting each and every week, lighting candles on before Shabbos and of course before all the holidays. We also have Hanukkah where we light candles, but that's only for 8 days out of the year. Lighting candles before Shabbat and festivals and holidays, that's something that we do every single week. That's an opportunity every week to be adding in spiritual light and energy in our own home, and from there expanding outward. Now, until now, the custom in many circles has been that girls begin to light Shabbat candles after their marriage. Until then, they fulfill their obligation through their mother's candle lighting. And she has this in mind when she lights the candle. She lights the candle, she is lighting it for everyone in the household to fulfill this mitzvah. Now that darkness is increased outside, we should add light in our own homes by having girls before marriage also light Shabbat candles. In recent years, we've seen an additional unfortunate development. In better times of the past, all Jewish mothers kindled Shabbat candles. Their home was therefore constantly bright, starting with Shabbat, from which light flows to all the following weekdays. The same is true of festivals. In the recent irregular times, there are Jewish homes in which, for whatever reason, the mother is unfortunately completely unaware of the mitzvah of lighting candles for Shabbat and festivals. This isn't her fault. Either she wasn't taught about it, a breach was caused by the upheavals and wars, or some other reason led to her being unaware of this mitzvah. In such homes, it is sometimes easier to get the daughter to light candles, and the mother will follow later. This has already happened in a number of homes. The daughter started lighting candles, and this affected the entire home by introducing the light of Judaism. A few days or weeks later, the mother followed her daughter's lead and also started lighting candles. So, of course, anyone changing the habits and regular occurrences that we do on a day-to-day basis, as we get older, it's a little more difficult to change our ways and change things, even to make changes for the good. And sometimes if we want to encourage a family to make changes, if we're able to influence the younger people in the household to make gradual increases in light. Then afterwards, their parents, the older ones in the household, will also see how beautiful it is, and they will follow along as well. And therefore, the Rebbe was encouraging, in 1974, when he spoke this talk to women, he was encouraging them to start this campaign of getting not just people that were unaware of this mitzvah to light candles, but we should start with even young girls should light candles as well. This practice should therefore be introduced to add Jewish light by having young girls light Shabbat candles. This should be done by young girls even before marriage and even before bat mitzvah age. As soon as they are able to start making blessings and recite the Shema Yisrael, they should begin lighting Shabbat candles. This practice should be promoted as broadly as possible so that it should be eventually reach even those few homes that are still unaware of Judaism. So this was a novel idea that the Rebbe was presenting in 1974, that we should, the entire Jewish world should not just light candles after women get married, but even earlier, even young girls should also light a candle. Now, the interesting thing that unique about this specific mitzvah campaign of lighting Shabbat candles, which was different than many of the other campaigns, like the Tefillin campaign and the Mezuzah campaign, to try and get other people that do not yet fulfill these mitzvahs and to encourage them to fulfill these mitzvahs as well, is that even in observant homes where the mothers were lighting Shabbat candles, now the Rebbe was encouraging that everyone in these households should light, all the girls should light Shabbat candles. And we should use this ability that they have to illuminate the world. Women, and especially those that are teachers, certainly see and understand what a powerful positive impact this practice will have on young girls. When they are told that they are now independent in terms of their ability to add light to their homes by lighting candles before Shabbat and festivals. The candles are lit with a blessing in which they express their gratitude to Hashem, to God, for giving the mitzvah of candle lighting, and describe God as the King of the universe. That's how we begin all of the blessings that we say on specific mitzvot. We say, Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam, or we address Hashem, blessed are you God, the King of the universe, that commanded us with this specific, sanctified us, and gave us this specific mitzvah. This shows that a young girl adding Jewish light in her home impacts the entire world, making the world at least a little better than it was before she kindled her candle. When many Jewish girls will add light, it will eventually illuminate their homes, the Jews around them, and ultimately the entire world. This light will cause everyone to stop thinking about negative matters and rather devote their minds to good and proper conduct. When we are talking about Jews, this means following the path of Torah. So now we're giving the ability not just to older women in lighting Shabbat candles, but even a young girl recognizes that with her one mitzvah that she's doing, her one flame that she's kindling, by kindling that flame and illuminating her home with the light of this mitzvah, the light of the mitzvah of Shabbat candles, from that candle continues to affect her entire household, continues to affect cumulatively through many girls in each of their homes lighting Shabbat candles, will collectively dispel the darkness and bring people closer to Hashem, bring the entire world closer to serving God, serving Hashem through fulfillment of Torah and mitzvahs, specifically when we're speaking to Jewish people, that we should try our best to add in, to continually grow in our observance of Torah and mitzvahs, making small increases and changes, little bit at a time. And ultimately, this will illuminate the final days of exile and usher in the redemption by righteous Mashiach speedily in our time. So, of course, through collectively, each and every one of us fulfilling our mission, our job, making our space in the world a little bit closer to the way that it was intended to be, collectively, each one of us doing our little part, collectively, we change the world, each in our own corner. When a person changes it over here in Regina, and they change it over there in France and other places where Jews live, each and every mitzvah that is being done, cumulatively, it changes the entire world to be ready for the coming of Mashiach. Now, where do we see this coming back to where we started the class regarding Rivka and when she began lighting Shabbat candles, which is the source of starting to light candles from a young age? The Alter Rebbe famously said that we can and must derive a contemporary lesson from the weekly Torah portion. So the Alter Rebbe said, the first Chabad Rebbe said that we should study the Torah portion of each week, and we should learn lessons from it, how we can make changes in our own life based on the Torah portion of the week. Our Torah portion contains an incredible lesson that shows us that Shabbat candles are relevant as soon as a girl reaches the age of education. It is surprising that no one noticed this clear lesson until now. So years bygone, Jewish girls did light Shabbat candles even from a young age. Perhaps for a number of generations it stopped, perhaps because of the difficulty and poverty that was widespread. It was difficult to obtain, or for other reasons. And now the Rebbe is explaining that he's not creating a new idea that didn't exist before. We were just renewing an idea that already existed, already was practiced for many years, beginning with Rivka Imenu, with Rebecca, our matriarch. The only sign necessary. Isaac brought Rebecca into the tent of his mother, Sarah. He took her as a wife, and he loved her. Isaac was then consoled over the loss of his mother. So as we mentioned at the beginning of the class, that what happened after Sarah passed away, then Abraham sends his trusted servant Eliezer, to go to Haran and go find a wife for Yitzchak, for his son Yitzchak, and he brings back Rivka. So when Rivka comes back, the verse tells us, "Vayaviu Yitzchak ha'oihala Sarah imai," and Yitzchak brought her to the tent of Sarah his mother. Now it seems a bit superfluous to say where exactly he brought her. The main point that the Torah is making is that Rebecca came back, and eventually they got married. What is the purpose of mentioning that he brought Sarah? He brought Rivka into Sarah's home, into Sarah's tent. So let's take a look at Rashi's commentary. Rashi comments, this phrase is superfluous and is written to indicate Rebecca's merit. He brought her into the tent, and she was his mother Sarah. In other words, she became exactly like his mother Sarah. So in other words, if we read the verse a little bit differently and put the comma in a different place, it will read Vayivieha Rivka ha'ayala, that she brought Rivka to her tent, comma, Sarah imai, Sarah his mother. He brought her into her tent, and then Sarah his mother, she became just like his mother Sarah. What does this mean that she became just like her mother Sarah? For as long as Sarah was alive, the lamp would remain lit in her tent from one Shabbat Eve until the next Shabbat Eve. There was always a blessing, i.e. a miraculous increase in the dough, and a cloud constantly hovered over the tent. But since she died, all these had ceased. And when Rebecca came, they resumed. This is from a Medrash in Bereshit Rabbah. So Rashi comments that what does it mean that Rebecca brought Rivka into the tent? That he brought her into the tent, not just into the tent of his mother Sarah, but when he brought her into the tent, she became just like his mother. The miracles that transpired when Sarah was alive, when his mother Sarah was alive, and they ceased to be performed, those miracles ceased after she passed away, which there were 3 specific miracles that took place each week. Number 1 is that when she would light Shabbat candles on Friday night, those candles would continue burning an entire week up until she was ready to light it the following week, and then they would go out. Number 2 is that there was a blessing, she had a miraculous blessing in her dough. She'd make a small amount of dough and miraculously increased. Another interpretation is perhaps that when the dough was very filling, you only had to eat a small amount of her food and you'd feel full and satiated. And the third miracle was that a cloud constantly hovered over the tent. The Shekhinah, cloud of the Hashem's glory was always hovering over the tent. And when Sarah passed away, these 3 miracles all stopped. However, when 3-year-old Rivka and 3-year-old Rebecca was brought into her tent, suddenly these 3 miracles resumed again. On the verse, Isaac brought Rebecca into the tent of his mother Sarah, Rashi cites from Bereshit Rabbah that this means that when Rebecca entered the tent, Isaac saw that she was exactly like his mother Sarah. How did he see this? How did he see that she was just like her mother? The Medrash explains, as we mentioned, quoted from Rashi, that when Sarah was alive, the lamp would remain lit in her tent from one Shabbat Eve until the next Shabbat Eve, and after her death, the lamp was extinguished. When Isaac brought Rebekah into Sarah's tent, he saw that she was like his mother because the miracle of the lamp burning from one Shabbat Eve to the next resumed. The simple meaning of the Torah is that Rebekah lit Shabbat candles. This is how the Medrash explains the verse, and Rashi cites in his commentary, which is devoted to explaining the simple meaning of the Torah to a beginner student. So when we look at Rashi's commentary, unlike many of the other commentaries, which are explaining deeper meanings, midrashic meanings of the verses, Rashi sets out to explain, as he mentions in his introduction to his commentary of Rashi on the Torah, that he's writing this explanation to answer simple questions that a young beginner student would have as they were learning the Torah. And therefore, sometimes there are a number of times throughout his commentary that he says that I don't know what this means, meaning he doesn't know how to explain specific verses on the very simple, basic level. And here he explains this particular verse to mean that, what does it mean that Rebecca was brought into his mother's home, that he's just like his mother, to the extent that these miracles did not cease to happen after his mother passed away. And when Rivka was brought into the home, suddenly these miracles came back again. Of course, this happened all as soon as she came to the home, and she only got married to Isaac, quite a while later. This candle lighting could not have begun after she married Isaac, because the verse first states that Isaac brought Rebekah into the tent, and he immediately saw that she was just like his mother. Sarah became the lamp, that he was just like his mother Sarah because the lamp she lit burnt from one Shabbat Eve to the next. This caused him later to take Rebekah as his wife. When he saw that all these miracles returned and she was just as righteous as his mother, then that's what encouraged him and was part of creating that environment in which he decided that he wanted to actually marry her, and they actually got married. But immediately upon coming into the home, she was already lighting Shabbat candles because of these miracles returned immediately upon her coming back, and she was only 3 years old at the time before she was married. Then obviously it must be that the Shabbat candles which she lit was talking about during that period of time. So immediately when she came to the home as a young girl, she was lighting Shabbat candles. We see from the sequence of events that Rebecca was already lighting candles before her marriage. Now, we know that all of our sages teach us that all of the patriarchs fulfilled the entire Torah long before it was given. So Abraham and he taught his son Yitzchak, and then Yaakov. Each of them fulfilled the mitzvot, each and every one of the mitzvot, even before they were given. Of course, the Torah was not formally given until many years later. But they were fulfilling the mitzvah by being able to, at least in a spiritual sense, they were able to study directly from Hashem, their interactions with God, and were be able to, with their divine understanding, to understand the Torah even before it was formally given. Now, Jewish law instructs that when a wife is not lighting Shabbat candles for whatever reason, the husband is obligated to light them. As we learned earlier from Shulchan Aruch, that the mitzvah of lighting Shabbat candles is both for men and women. And even in a house, a married couple, if the wife is away and not lighting them in the house and the husband is home, then he should light Shabbat candles, which that I've done myself a number of times. When Shterna was in the hospital, just given birth, was not able to light Shabbat candles in our home, so then I was able to do that mitzvah. Since Abraham observed all of the mitzvot, both biblical and rabbinic, it is clear that after the death of Sarah at the beginning of this week's portion, he began lighting Shabbat candles himself, starting on the first Friday. He would have continued doing this throughout the 3 weeks until Rebecca came. So, throughout the 3 years, until Rebecca came. So each of these, as soon as his wife passed away, as soon as Sarah passed away, Abraham would have continued to light Shabbat candles each week. And yet, the miracle that transpired when his wife Sarah lit candles did not continue when he lit the candles. Therefore, it's not that the tent had become dark without candles when Rebecca arrived. Abraham had been lighting the candles, or Isaac, his son maybe was lighting the candles, perhaps both of them, maybe they both lit candles. Whatever the case is, definitely someone in their tent was lighting candles before Rivka came, before Rivka was brought into the picture. Nevertheless, Rebecca did not suffice with Abraham, who was elderly and advanced in years, lighting candles, or with 40-year-old Isaac lighting candles. She insisted on lighting candles herself as well. And this the Torah relates clearly. So clearly, even being the great people that Abraham and Isaac were, that Avram and Yitzchak were at that time, the great spiritual people that they were at that time, nevertheless, this young girl comes into the home and does not suffice with the candles that were already being lit by Abraham and Isaac, and she continues to light candles herself. And at that point, the miracle of Sarah's candles being lit from week to week then returns. There's a powerful lesson here for us. Even when a young girl is living in a home where there's an adult obligated in candle lighting, who lights candles every week, and even when that adult is a great and righteous person, the girl should still light Shabbat candles, just like Rebecca did. Rebecca did this in the home in which Abraham and Isaac lit candles, and no one is more righteous than them. Who is more righteous than our patriarchs and matriarchs? Avraham and Yitzchak were already elderly, and they're lighting candles each week, and yet at the same point in time, Rivka comes to the home, Rebecca comes to the home, and she continues to light candles that not suffice with the candles that are lit already, and wants to add more light on her own. There's another incredible point here. We noted that Abraham certainly lit candles himself every Friday, but his candle lighting, and that of Isaac as well, did not accomplish the great miracle that the lamp would remain lit from one Shabbat Eve until the next, like it did for Sarah. And then Rebecca, when she began lighting candles at the age of 3, then these miracles came back. This shows us the incredible power of the mitzvah of candle lighting, even when it is done by very young girls, a young girl of 3, and yet the miracle returned specifically when she lit these candles. Every Jewish girl is a daughter of Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah, and her candle lighting illuminates her entire home all week long until the next Friday. So all Jewish girls are children of our matriarchs, Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, and Leah. The only difference is that the candles of Sarah and Rebecca express this quality in a physical and revealed form, with a physical candle burning miraculously from Friday to Friday. So when they lit the candles, this unique spiritual quality that it had was enclosed in the physical reality, and the spiritual light that was impacted by the world around them from their candle lighting was also felt in the physical, and also seen in the physical realm, that their candles lit miraculously from week to week. But the deeper concept is true of everyone lighting Shabbat candles, even though it is not apparent to the naked eye. The actions of our patriarchs and matriarchs empower us, their children, to continue in their path. And therefore, the fact that they lit candles, and their candles lit from one week and remain lit to the next week, that inspires us that our Shabbat candles that we light today have the same impact. They also remain lit from week to week. Not necessarily in the physical sense. We don't have a candle doesn't actually physically burn all week. But the impact of the candles, the light that we've added to the world, the spirituality that we've added to the world, and the effect that we have in our space and the space around us through the lighting of Shabbat candles continues throughout the entire week, giving us energy and power until the coming week. So that every daughter of Sarah, Rebecca, etc., has the power to illuminate the entire week with the light of her mitzvah of candle lighting, like the our sages teach us that the light of Shabbat reflects the entire week and it impacts the entire week. Specifically with this light of Shabbat candles, like Sarah and Rebecca's candles, which are lit from one week to the next. Similarly, we have the light and impact of those candles that we light today continue the whole week. Any comments or questions before we move along? Okay. Question then becomes why? Why did only the candles of Sarah and Rebecca and those of their daughters in all generations burn from Friday to Friday, but not those of Abraham and Jewish men? What was unique about this unique quality that in Sarah and Rebecca physically, and in their daughters and granddaughters and grandchildren for all future generations in the Jewish lineage of women and girls, that quality remains intact and impacts the entire week from one week to the next, whereas we don't find that quality in Abraham or in Jewish men? We can understand this based on a teaching of the sages about the difference between men and women. The sages say that a man's role is to bring in the wheat to the home, while the woman's role is to turn the wheat into edible food. As we mentioned at the beginning of the class, the different roles of primary roles of men and women in a household. Primary role of men is to working in the outside, transforming outside and bringing it in, working the land, doing the harvest, bringing in the wheat. And then the woman's role is to take that and make it into edible food, make it palatable, enjoyable, to be able to be consumed. God designed the nature of the world such that men by nature are conquerors, who acquire things from the outside world and bring them into their homes. For women, by contrast, the glory of a princess is on the inside. Her role as the mainstay of the home inside the home is to transform and refine the elements brought in from the outside and make them fit for human consumption, and even for the consumption of God, the supernal man. So the idea of the Hebrew word for Adam, for man, also one of the reasons why man is called man is because the word Adam also comes from the word Adome, which means similar. The Zohar teaches us the person is called Adam because they're Adama La'elyon. They are similar compared to the one above. We're compared to our Creator. So when somebody prepares food that's befitting for a human being, not only is it fitting for a human being in the physical sense, it's also befitting for a human being in the spiritual sense. That spiritual sense is elevating it and feeding it to the supernal man, feeding it to God, so to speak, by making a blessing over it and utilizing the energy of that food for positive and good things. We're thereby elevating the sparks of godliness that there are in that food and bringing them up and bring them as an offering to Hashem, feeding God, so to speak, with enjoyment that the food that He created in this world is being utilized for appropriate purposes. As a result, when Abraham lit candles, it did not miraculously illuminate the house in the physical sense, because this was not his specific role. So of course, we each have to help out with each other's roles when necessary, but there's a primary role of Abraham and there's a primary role of Sarah. Because this was not Abraham's primary role, even though he was lighting the candles in his home, yet the one that brings the true warmth into the home and brings the environment to the home and is the mainstay, is the one that educates the home and makes sure that everything that's happening is in the appropriate one. The one that sets the tone in the home is primarily the women, the wives, the mothers of the children. Sarah and Rebecca, followed by all their daughters, were charged with God with the role and mission of managing the home, including its physical elements. They therefore have the power to illuminate their homes constantly with the light of their candles, so that in all week it will be openly apparent that this is a home in which a daughter of Sarah and Rebecca lit candles. This underlines the importance and merit of working to ensure that all Jewish girls light Shabbat and festival candles from as soon as they reach the age of education. They should understand this idea and concept that they have the ability to impact not just themselves, not just their homes, but the entire world around them. Each and every Jewish girl from a young age, as soon as they begin understanding, from 3, are able to continue light Shabbat candles And when they light the Shabbat candles, recognize that that's bringing tremendous light and spirituality to their homes, and bringing that not just in their homes, it continues to light, continues the spiritual effect of that, continues from one week to the next until it fixes and repairs and lightens up all the darkness and evil around us in the entire world. Lighting the candles of Shabbat should lead, as the Medrash says, to God showing us the lights of Zion and the true and complete redemption very soon. And by lighting the Shabbat candles, then we'll merit the lighting of candles that God will do, which those are lighting the lights of Zion, the lights of Zion, with the coming of Mashiach, which then we'll see the true light when everyone will live peacefully together. Complete peace and harmony may happen very soon.